The Rise and Fall of Milestone Comics, a deep dive into the most important Black-owned comic book company. Milestone Comics was one of the most revolutionary comic book publishers in history. Founded in 1993, it didn't just create superheroes, it redefined what superheroes could be. Milestone introduced a new generation of Black and minority characters, tackled real-world social issues, and proved that diversity in comics wasn't just about filling quotas, it was about telling stories that mattered. But despite its groundbreaking success, Milestone Comics faded into obscurity by the late 90s. So, what happened? How did a comic book company with some of the most unique and socially relevant stories in the industry rise so fast and then collapse just as quickly? Why did Milestone struggle to maintain its footing despite critical acclaim? And more importantly, what is its legacy today? This deep dive will break down the entire history of Milestone Comics, their origins, their bold storytelling, their struggles, their fall, and their eventual return to the industry. Hey guys, just a quick reminder. If you're enjoying this video, please support me by clicking the like button and subscribing to my channel. It really helps a lot in growing this small channel, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now, let's get back to the video. The origins of Milestone Comics, why it was necessary. To understand why Milestone was such a big deal, we have to go back to the state of comic books in the early 1990s. By this time, Marvel and DC were the dominant forces in the industry. Superheroes like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and the X-Men were household names. However, there was a serious lack of diversity. Yes, there were some Black superheroes, characters like Black Panther, Luke Cage, Storm, and Cyborg, but they were either side characters, written by white creators, or lacked the depth and focus of their white counterparts. Many Black heroes were also rooted in problematic stereotypes. Luke Cage, for example, was heavily inspired by blaxploitation films, making him feel more like a caricature than a fully developed hero. More importantly, there were almost no Black comic book creators in positions of power at Marvel or DC. The stories being told about Black characters weren't coming from Black voices. That's where Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, Michael Davis, then Derek T. Dingle came in. These four Black creators saw a massive gap in the industry and decided to do something about it. Their goal was to create a comic book company that was by Black creators, for Black readers, without interference from corporate executives who didn't understand their vision. The birth of Milestone Media and the DC deal. In 1993, McDuffie, Cowan, Davis, and Dingle officially launched Milestone Media, an independent Black-owned comic book company. However, they knew they needed a major publisher's backing to get their books into stores nationwide. That's where DC Comics came in. Milestone struck a historic deal with DC Comics. DC would distribute Milestone's books but would not own them. This was unprecedented. It meant that Milestone had full creative control over its stories while still having the marketing power of one of the biggest comic book companies in the world. The deal allowed Milestone to create its own shared universe, later called the Dakotaverse, the fictional world centered around the city of Dakota. It was unlike anything else in comics at the time. The Dakotaverse, a universe unlike any other. The Dakotaverse was not your typical superhero world. It was grittier, more socially conscious, and more reflective of real-life issues than Marvel or DC's universes. Milestone used its comics to explore topics that mainstream comics often ignored. Racism, police brutality, gang violence, single parenthood, systemic oppression, drug abuse, LGBTQ+ representation. The heroes in the Dakotaverse weren't just fighting supervillains, they were fighting against real social injustices. This made Milestone Comics feel more relevant and powerful than most mainstream superhero stories. Milestone's most iconic characters. Milestone introduced a range of new characters, many of whom have since become legendary. Static, Virgil Hawkins, a teenage hero with electromagnetic powers who later became the star of the hit animated series Static Shock. His stories tackled bullying, gang violence, and the struggles of being a black teen in America. Icon and Rocket, a Superman-like alien, Icon, and his teenage sidekick, Rocket. Icon had the power of a god but held ultra-conservative views, while Rocket was a young, progressive black girl who challenged his beliefs. Their stories explored race, class, and political ideologies. Hardware, a genius inventor who built a high-tech suit to fight corruption. His story was a direct response to corporate greed and systemic racism. He was essentially Iron Man but with a much sharper edge. Blood Syndicate, a gang of metahumans who gained powers after a police experiment went wrong. Instead of a superhero team, they were a superpowered street gang, dealing with internal conflicts, racism, and survival in a brutal world. Milestone's comics weren't just about action, they were about identity, struggle, and social justice. But despite their uniqueness, trouble was brewing. The fall of Milestone Comics, what went wrong? Despite strong storytelling and a passionate fanbase, Milestone Comics struggled to stay afloat. Several factors led to its downfall. 1. The comic book crash of the 90s. In the mid-90s, the comic book industry collapsed. Publishers had been printing excessive copies of comics, banking on collectors buying them in bulk. When the speculator bubble burst, comic sales plummeted, and many independent publishers, including Milestone, suffered. 2. Retailer resistance. Some comic book stores refused to stock Milestone's books. Whether it was racial bias or skepticism about the marketability of black heroes, Milestone Comics weren't getting the shelf space they needed. 3. Lack of marketing support from DC. Even though Milestone had a deal with DC, it didn't get the same level of promotion as Batman or Superman comics. Without strong marketing, sales suffered. 4. Creative burnout and industry politics. McDuffie and his team faced constant pushback from the comic book industry. Despite their success, they struggled to get the same level of respect as white creators. The constant battle took its toll. By 1997, Milestone Comics had essentially shut down. Their characters were later integrated into DC Comics, but Milestone itself was no longer an active publisher. Milestone's legacy and revival. Even though Milestone Comics faded, its impact never disappeared. Static Shock became one of the most beloved superhero cartoons of the 2000s. Milestone's characters were eventually brought into DC's main universe. McDuffie became one of the most influential black creators in comics and animation, writing for Justice League Unlimited, Ben 10, and more before his passing in 2011. In 2021, Milestone made a comeback with Milestone Returns, a rebooted line of comics bringing Static, Icon, and Hardware back for a new generation. Final thoughts: why Milestone matters. Milestone Comics proved that diversity in comics wasn't just a trend, it was a necessity. They paved the way for modern black superheroes like Miles Morales, Riri Williams, and Naomi. Their struggles also exposed the challenges black creators face in an industry that often resists change. So, will Milestone's revival last? Time will tell. But one thing is certain, Milestone Comics changed the game forever. What do you think? Let's keep the conversation going. Milestone's legacy is too important to be forgotten. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more content like this, make sure to like the video to support the channel and help more people discover Milestone's impact. Subscribe to African Reads Comics for more deep dives into comic book history, characters, and the culture behind them. Comment below what's your favorite Milestone character. Do you think the new Milestone revival can succeed? Let's discuss. Share this video with fellow comic book fans, especially those who need to know about the greatness of Milestone Comics. Stay tuned for more, and as always, keep reading, keep exploring, and keep supporting diverse stories in comics.